morning. I am delighted to be here because it's the first time that I have to talk about sufficiency and innovation. Usually people think that sufficiency is against innovation, or you have to choose between sufficiency and innovation, but actually they go hand in hand. And innovating for the 21st century within the planetary boundaries requires sufficiency. And in our daily life, we all do without knowing, or try to do without knowing, sufficiency, because sufficiency is about doing things right. We all try to do things right? However, very often, we are trying to do, it's about doing the right things. But actually, very often, we are trying to do the right things, but with technologies that are not right. And that's why we end up in a situation where we are today. So sufficiency is not at all a new concept. If you go back in the history, it goes back for us to the Greek civilization, and in the non-Western part of the world, in all old civilizations, you will find plenty of argument for sufficiency, and societies were organized around sufficiency. When the industrial revolution came, we started moving away from what sufficiency is, because we had this in our mind that technology will answer all our questions, all our needs. However, today we are in a situation where we do need technologies, and we will still need technologies. However, whatever technology that is put in the market, it should be within the planetary, complying within the planetary boundaries requirement, which is not the case of most of the technologies we have today. From scientific perspective, sufficiency is you will find sufficiency in different disciplines, and that's why most of the people say, I never heard about the concept, or I don't know what's that, because it comes from different disciplines. And because it comes from different disciplines in science, this means that from policy perspective, it is in different policy areas. And they are not all put together. What we try to do, and this is from where this definition in the IPCC report came, is trying to put all these pieces about sufficiency from different scientific disciplines and from different policy areas together to see how sufficiency could contribute to addressing the 21st century challenges. So if I go back to, I splitted the scientific literature into, if we look at just to 6 disciplines. So for example, ecological economics and physics, sufficiency in this case is about embedding physics in economics, or it's about making sure that we do consider in all our technological innovation the first and the second thermodynamics law. So if you have only the first thermodynamics law, you end up with circular economy, reusing, cycling, etc. But each time, for each of these steps, you still need natural resources to use. If you would consider the second thermodynamics law, then you would avoid from the start some of the solutions that you are working on. And this is what sufficiency is about. It's about avoiding at the front before and starting from the human needs. And if you go to political science and sociology, so sufficiency in these disciplines is defined. It's about policies, so it's about governmental intervention, but governmental intervention that is based on practice theory. The practice theory differs from the behavior rationality of individuals. The practice theory is about the institutions, the infrastructure, and the individuals, but the individuals within these institutions and within these infrastructures. Because we do have enough empirical evidence that individuals alone, this rationality of individuals is limited by the infrastructure and the institutional arrangement that we do have. And if we do not make this shift, then we will end up in a situation where we put the burden of the transition on individuals which are locked in the solutions that we put in place, that industry put in place with the support through policies, actually, through policy design. And this is a paradigm shift in the way we design policies for sustainability. And then an important feature of sufficiency that we don't have in any other sustainability concept comes to us from political philosophy. And from this perspective, sufficiency is about equity. And this is from where this pillar that is in the definition we included in the IPCC, well-being for all, because basic needs are all the same. It does not matter if you are here in Lausanne or if you are in Lagos or any other city of the world. We do all have the same basic needs, and then the solutions are context-specific. And this is another added value of sufficiency that we don't have in other sustainability concepts. By combining all this, all what is in different scientific disciplines, I ended up with this definition that is today known as the IPCC definition. So sufficiency is articulated around 4 pillars. It is first set of policy measures and daily practices. So it's policy intervention, governmental intervention, and it's daily practices. This means it's not behavior change of individual. It's societal, is an organizing principle for the society. The question that we have to answer is in which society we would like to live. Do we would like to live in society that will leave to the kids of today livable planet, or are we happy to live in society that is where we will not leave a livable planet for our kids? Do we want to live in a society where we increase inequalities? The share, for example, of homeless people in the EU is increasing. The share of people facing energy and mobility poverty in the EU is increasing, while we have never been as rich as we are today. And I take the example of the EU, but this applies to all OECD countries, in rich countries. So these are the kind of questions that sufficiency questions, actually. And this is why it is challenging, because it questions the mindset in which we have been trained, the mindset in which we have all worked until today, and it questions the values that we have as in modernity. The second pillar is about the fact sufficiency is about avoiding, and avoiding is very important. It's not about reducing, it's not about improving, reducing like in circular economy, improving like efficiency improvement, for example, energy efficiency or resource efficiency. It's about avoiding upfront the use of all natural resources. Sufficiency was understood in the past in Germany and France as about only energy, but actually when you go back to all the literature on ecological sustainability, you realize that sufficiency is about all natural resources and not just energy. This is the second pillar, and the third and the fourth pillar, they come from political philosophy linked to sustainability. It's about providing well-being for all. So we do all have some basic needs that are the same, and sufficiency is about providing, ensuring that our basic needs are addressed, are satisfied, satisfying basic needs, and this satisfaction is context-specific, of course. And all this should be done within planetary boundaries. I give you an example of the implications of sufficiency for today's debate in OECD countries related to carbon or climate neutrality. Today, most of OECD, I think all OECD countries, have a carbon neutrality target or climate neutrality target, it depends of the country, for 2050. By considering 2050, we decided on voluntary basis, this is our understanding to the requirement we do have from the Paris Agreement, that we should become carbon or climate neutral by 2050. We decided when to do that, without taking into account our past emissions, without taking into account the fact that the remaining carbon budget is limited, and this means that if we consume very fast the remaining carbon budget, there will be nothing left for our kids. And by forgetting that, by setting a target for 2050, we are basically unfair for the youngest ones. And of course, we are extremely unfair for all the countries that did not contribute to the climate crisis. If we would consider planetary boundaries, when setting the climate neutrality target, so for example, the EU should be carbon neutral around 2030, while our current target is for 2050. What does that mean? It means that all the emissions that we are planning for, so we do have plan at the EU level to emit, because we have planned to be carbon neutral by 2050. This means that we do have plan how much emissions we will have in each decade. And if we do consider planetary boundaries, this means that all the emissions that we are planning for between 2030 and 2050 in the EU are emissions that do not belong to us. We don't have the right to do that. There is no legal framework to allow us to do that. And actually, from moral perspective, it's worse, because basically we are using the carbon budget of our kids. And this is why sufficiency is challenging, because we look at the international level, we do look the OECD countries as very advanced in terms of sustainability, in terms of carbon neutrality, but in reality we are not, because we do not take into account the constraints of the planet. This is one area where we must improve our policies, where sufficiency obliges us to move there. Another area is the fact that we do have, in the EU, for example, we do have an increase of the share of homeless people, people facing energy poverty, mobility poverty, nutrition poverty as well, including, I'm from Paris, including in Paris city. And all these poverties, we do accept intellectually that some people cannot eat in our countries, do not have enough food. Or we do accept that in our countries, in our rich countries, some of our fellow citizens cannot heat their homes during winter time, or they cannot cool them when you have heat waves. It is this intellectual acceptance that is very hard to challenge, that sufficiency challenges, that makes all this debate about sufficiency. But actually, when you think about it, when you are in your warm home, and you think that maybe in your building you have neighbors who are in a very cold place, then you would realize that from human perspective, from moral perspective, it is likely that you will not accept that. But we do not act against this. So for example, the policies that we have today are not about eradicating energy, mobility, and nutrition poverty. The policies that we have today in OECD countries are about elevating these poverties. The fact that they are about elevating, this means that intellectually we do accept that some people will not eat, will not have enough food when they are hungry. So this is the kind of challenges from policy perspective that sufficiency requires us to address, and this is why sufficiency is very specific compared to the other existing sustainability concept. From policy design perspective, sufficiency is not included in any of the EU instrument. It is included. It has been included in the French energy transition law in 2015. However, this does not mean that my government moved towards sufficiency. We have done the opposite most of the time, except when we had the energy crisis in 2022. That was just a few months after the publication of the IPCC report. We even had our President Macron, on the TV saying that he asked the government to prepare energy sufficiency plans. At that time in France, the understanding of sufficiency was only related to energy. It is still the case for most of the research, for example, coming from Germany. However, in France, we expanded to going more beyond energy, because France is the only OECD country and the only country in the world where we do have scenarios, pathways for 2050 that consider sufficiency. The first one goes back to 2003. So we have more than 2 decades of experience in designing these pathways, but the first ones were related only to energy. Today, we do have pathways that consider materials and that consider food and that consider other parameters. Not yet, we don't yet have pathways, this is what we are working on, that consider this, that includes this equity consideration. Because otherwise, as designed today, the energy transition, it is designed it is not an inclusive transition, it is an exclusive transition. In French, we use the word bobo. Bobo are all the people here in this room, are the people, the high middle class. So we are all bobo, and the energy transition is designed by us for us, but we forget that we are living in a society and we cannot be all bobo. And this is what sufficiency does. Then comes the question of, is sufficiency about against technologies? I am very often asked this question, and sometimes I have been in France, they organized the Tribunal of Future Generations, and the question was, shall we go for sufficiency or go for technology innovation? So already the settings was wrong, but I ended in this debate, and the answer is that without sufficiency, we cannot innovate for within the planetary boundaries. Because all the innovation that we are doing, we do not consider the second law of thermodynamics, and that's why we do not innovate within the planetary boundaries. And I came with an example of innovation. I came with something high-tech. You have all experienced this. At least once you bought something online, and you received it at home, and then you have the box of what you bought, very small box, and put in a huge packaging. And this packaging actually, and it's then they put it's air, and then this is transported, etc. So it goes in so many directions. It increases emissions. So what sufficiency would do if sufficiency would have been considered? So sufficiency is about avoiding, always avoiding. So all what is surrounding the box of the iPhone could be avoided. It's useless, right? It has no added value for the service you are looking for. What you need is your iPhone in its box and protect it. That's all what you need. And to remove this, why do we end up with this kind of packaging? Because there are no solutions in the logistical global chain on adjusting the packaging to the box that you bought. And for example, there is a French startup who is working on this. So it's not about recycling, it's about avoiding upfront. And they proposed for this an artificial intelligence that will allow to design the packaging or to select and design the right packaging based on what you would like to transport. And according to some calculations, we could avoid up to 50% of packaging raw materials if we would consider sufficiency in e-commerce. So we do have examples of innovation in all fields that are sufficiency-driven innovation. And whatever you are working on, just ask yourself two questions for sufficiency. Is it It's not working. Is it avoiding the use of natural resources or not? If it is increasing the use of natural resources without delivering on the well-being of the people, what people need. So you need to have a cell phone to communicate with other people. If it does not have added value compared to the need that you are addressing, then this should be removed. And this is what sufficiency does. And the other thing is the equity issue. Is it contributing to equity, or is it adding another layer of inequalities? And we do have plenty of innovations that are just adding new layers of inequalities. And this is why I think the road to sufficiency, mainstreaming sufficiency, is bumpy. However, since the publication of the IPCC report, it was quite challenging to have sufficiency included in the IPCC report, because it does challenge us as scientists in the way we think and what we are looking for. But at the same time, I told you what happened is that it's already in the French law since 2015. That was the main argument that made sufficiency ending in the IPCC report. That's why we need policies to have them to move forward some concepts that look like extremely innovative, why sufficiency will find its roots in the Greek civilization. And then came this energy crisis. And the interesting part of the energy crisis is that France, among the 27 EU countries, was the only country that developed energy sufficiency plan to face the energy crisis. And my colleagues from the Ministry of the Energy Transition, when they were going to Brussels to discuss our plans, then all other ones were saying, we don't know what is sufficiency. By the way, the French word for sufficiency is sobriété. So maybe for you who are French speakers. And now sufficiency, there is an uptake for sufficiency in Brussels. We are finally able to discuss sufficiency in Brussels, which was not the case before the energy crisis and before having it in the IPCC report. However, we don't have enough prototypes for sufficiency, because first there are plenty of misunderstanding of what sufficiency is, how sufficiency could contribute to sustainability, to innovation, to the well-being of the people. And this is an important work to be done, and this is why we established in Paris the World Sufficiency Lab, to clarify the concept and to get people together, to work together on sufficiency. And we need, if you look at the research and development project and policies, I looked mainly to the French ones and a little bit to the EU ones, so sufficiency is absent in the EU and the French policies, research and development policies, while actually this is where the real innovation is going to happen if we consider planetary boundaries. And the other important point is to clarify that sufficiency, because then it was understood by some people in France, for example, that sufficiency is about austerity, but actually sufficiency is the opposite. It's about protecting the most vulnerable people. And this is what comes to us from political philosophy that is not understood, that was not at all in the French debate. So if we would have had sufficiency, energy sufficiency policies in France, we would not have had energy poor household. It does not work together. So we have done something wrong, and what is wrong is obvious for me. We did not have energy sufficiency policies. And the other important point is there is always this question if sufficiency is for everywhere or not. So we did have some people working on sufficiency, but they did come up with the conclusion that sufficiency is about underconsumption, and this is for the wealthiest people if we look at the overall planet, so it's only for the rich countries. But actually it's not true, because sufficiency is about doing the right things, and doing the right things is context specific. Sufficiency is for all of us in this planet, but it's not the same. So sufficiency in developing countries, it's about an upgrade, and for the richest ones, sufficiency is about adjusting to the planetary constraints. So there will be no innovation that will be that will be aligned with planetary boundaries, with the climate emergency that we have today, if sufficiency is not considered. And I hope after today you will all have in your roadmaps sufficiency innovation journey. Thank you. Questions?
What an excellent opening to the concept of sufficiency. And I have to tell you, Yamina, we've received like over 30 questions here from the audience challenging you on this topic. I don't know if we'll have enough time for all those questions, but let's try to be concise on the following ones to address most of them. So one of the questions that people really wanted to know, it seems, is if your vision of sufficiency actually matches with the VAW innovation video that we have seen earlier.
Okay. Okay, not really, or not at all, to be frank. But actually, there is something very exceptional happening in Switzerland. So, for example, Geneva, I know it's not the same canton, right? Geneva developed their climate action plan. Is based that they developed in 2022, I think, the most recent one, is based on sufficiency. But it's not. I'm not surprised, because why? Because our perception and our understanding of sustainability before was about only technological improvement. So VAW plans are aligned with our, I would call it, past understanding, which is still mainstream understanding of sustainability. So there is work to do with Le Canton de Vaud on sufficiency, to include sufficiency.
Okay, we're here to challenge everyone, so, and we're here to progress, right? Now, another interesting question is, what about maintenance and taking care of things? You know, one thing is to innovate and creating something new, and then maybe another option could be just trying to maintain what we already have.
Yeah, among the sufficiency measures that we identified, you have ending the planned obsolescence through law, having the maintenance, reusing as well, actually. It's just that when you reuse, you know that you will not have exactly the same service as before. You just have to be aware of that. But maintenance is part of it.
All right.